Lemmy Kilmister, the famous lead singer of Motorhead, had a voice that could fly through the air. No one could deny how smart he was, and his voice made the earth shake. But Lemmy wasn't always good. He was a tool of chaos. Lemmy was the master of chaos, whether he was on one of his crazy tours or behind the wheel while drunk. He fought with some bands and admired others. What changed him to be this way? Why did he dislike these bands so much? Come with us as we show you Lemmy Kilmister's open, unfiltered, and tainted world and explain why he hates bands. The famous story of Lemmy starts in England on a cold Christmas Eve in 1945, not long after the war. Young people from the sleepy town of Stoke-on-Trent named Joan and Bill Kilmister had their first child, Fraser Kilmister, during this time of hope and renewal. Though they didn't seem like heroes, Joan, a loving nurse, and Bill were met by a religious priest in the Royal Air Force. After their love grew through all the chaos, they got married in a small wedding with close family and friends. At 3 months into the pregnancy, Lemmy's father, who was religious and liked music, split up with his mother. The little hands that would become the famous riffs in Motorhead's Ace of Spades were still in the air at that time. He moved with his family from Newcastle-under-Lyme to Madley when he was a little boy. Lemmy found comfort in his grandmother's piano music there. Sadly, this comfort would not last for long. The famous singer would have a hard time not being lonely when he finally settled down on a farm in Bedlech, Wales. Lemmy would be the only Englishman among the 700 Welsh students who hated him. He had a hard time being alone, but it made him the man he would become. It was a challenge that made him think in new ways and see things in new ways. Lemmy learned something from that. He might as well stand out than fit in. He still wanted to talk to people, though. George L. Willis was a rough rugby player who had 2 kids of his own when his mother wet him, and he said he knew what was wrong. Lemmy had a tough time getting along with his stepbrothers Tony and Patricia. Lemmy finally got what he needed, a rock and roll, when things got rough. It made Lemmy want to break away. How can we talk about Lemmy's endless imagination now that we've talked about where he got his unique style and rebellious attitude? As a child, Lemmy loved reading military history, horror movies, and science fiction books. These books shaped his tastes and fed his mind. He became more interested in more things, which made his mind and ideas grow. But something wasn't there. Power. Lemmy gave me a lot of it. What could he do with it? The problem was that even after Lemmy found the spots, he wasn't able to get in. If a child goes to that kind of place, it could be bad for the owner and the kid's parents. For Lemmy, though, the spirit of resistance came to life. Because he wasn't following the rules, he was ready to take a chance by going to nearby dance halls to see rock and roll bands. Lemmy was hypnotized by Little Richard and Elvis Presley, but it wasn't enough. While going to East Gold Sir Thomas Jones Comprehensive School, he wanted to be like those people. Because he was so into rock and roll, women, motorbikes, and horses, people in the halls started calling him Lemmy. Because he loved women so much, he took his love of rock and roll to a whole new level. How do you mean? Lemmy felt the same way when he saw a classmate playing guitar while girls looked on with admiration. He stole his mom's guitar and played it at school, where he was the talk of the school. But he was really bad at it. No matter what, he had a lot of female fans when he played the guitar. Not only girls were staring. The other boys made fun of him, fought with him, and picked on him. Lemmy finally had enough and fought back, which got him kicked out. After being kicked out of school, Lemmy started doing odd jobs. However, singing was his real calling. The problem was that he couldn't play. When he was 16, he saw the Beatles play at the famous Cavern Club in Liverpool. His life changed in a big way. Lemmy had an insight and began to learn how to play the guitar. Lemmy followed the same path as the Beatles. In 1965, he joined the Rock and Vickers. Their music was pretty good, and they went on trips all over Europe. It's possible that Lemmy would have been more successful if he had stayed with the band, but his stubbornness often caused problems between the other artists and the management. They chose to let him go from the Rock and Vickers after a particularly crazy tour. Lemmy was still motivated even though there was a problem. Knowing that they were the band he hated made him want to do better even more. In order to move up in his business, Lemmy moved to London to work as a roadie for Jimi Hendrix's band. His time as a roadie taught him more than anyone else about the music business and rock and roll in general. After his time with Jimi Hendrix, Lemmy changed his name to Ian Willis and joined the trippy rock band Sam Gopal. What made Lemmy act this way? Was he having any trouble back then? He then left Sam Gopal and joined the band Opal Butterfly. However, they didn't do well and finally broke up. Lemmy didn't seem to be getting the results he wanted. Getting into the space rock band Hawkwind in 1971 was his way of making things different. Hawkwind was the band that really showed off Lemmy's skills. Their big hit song, Silver Machine, was a huge hit, and he sang lead on it. But the light hid the dark spots that were inside the band. There are rumors that Lemmy got into fights with other band members and did a lot of drugs. He was great at singing, even if they were tired of hearing him. Because of this, he wasn't fired until 1975, after he was arrested for drug possession. Did he learn from his mistakes? He used drugs and caused trouble in every band he was in. Could he stop? Lemmy decided not to join any other band after being let go from Hawkwind. With a clear idea in his mind and a burning desire in his heart, he set out to find a band that would play his unprocessed, raw style of music. Before they became Motorhead, he, Larry Wallace on guitar, and Lucas Fox on drums made the band Bastard. But things weren't perfect at first. Lucas Fox was replaced by Phil "Filthy Animal" Taylor because Lemmy didn't like how he was performing. While they weren't quite there yet, Motorhead came back to life with Lemmy on bass and singing, Wallace on guitar, and Taylor on drums. Taylor had a friend named Fast Eddie Clarke who tried out to be the second guitarist for Motorhead in 1976. It was clear that Lemmy and Taylor were friends, and Clarke's heavy guitar playing was impressive. Wallace left the band, leaving Clarke as the only guitarist. This trio, Lemmy, Clarke, and Taylor, made up the original lineup of Motorhead. But they ran into a lot of problems along the way. A very small group of people attended their early concerts, and no one paid attention to their debut records. Lemmy wanted to quit because he had a reputation for being very determined. Record companies didn't care about the band and gave them bad reviews. He was sure that the band could do it. He was adamant about their music and never stopped being excited about it. His excitement brought everyone together. After that, the wonderful comfort of success came. Their self-titled first record, which came out in 1977, changed everything for them. Rock fans paid attention to the record because it had a strong and intense sound. After this, Motorhead had a string of hits with albums like Ace of Spades, Bomber, and Overkill. The song for Outcasts and Rebels from Ace of Spades cemented the band's place in rock history. All through his work, Lemmy had the support of many important people. Doug Smith was one of them. He helped Motorhead get through the tough music business and believed in the band's promise. Friendships with other rock stars, like Ozzy Osbourne, were very helpful for Lemmy in both his personal and business life. But some people were also against it. We're about to talk about the bands and people that Lemmy hated. Because he wouldn't give up, he was sure to make trouble and turn people off. Does he not have enough growth, which could explain why he is so stubborn? If that was true, he lost a lot of ground because it got into his personal life. Even though he was rude, Lemmy had a few important relationships in his life. When he married Susan Bennett in 1969, it didn't last long. They split up in 1971. They wished to split up. Lemmy was unhappy with his marriage because he thought he was too young and naive to settle down. He was hard on himself for this. Even though his marriage was said to have been terrible, he went on to date Wendy O. Williams, lead singer of the band Plasmatics. They were always together, in and out of the press. They were very close because they both admired each other and didn't follow the rules. Even though they never had children together, their friendship lasted long after their relationship stopped or became less serious. Over the course of his life, Lemmy had many serious relationships, but he was known for keeping his personal life very quiet. Certainly not all of his private business. It is said that Lemmy's difficult past was caused in large part by his love of drinking and using drugs. Lemmy had trouble with the law everywhere he went. He was arrested for having drugs, driving while drunk, and attack. It was said that his artistic ability was fueled by his cocaine and speed addiction, which also got him a lot of bad press. Motorhead ripped up the shows in North America in 1975 while they were on tour. When Lemmy tried to cross the border from Canada, he was caught with drugs in his hands. Because the cops found a stash of cocaine and speed on Lemmy, they took him to jail. That was, in fact, the first step. In 1984, a few years later, Lemmy was driving very fast and hit a light. In the blink of an eye, he was handcuffed and taken away on suspicion of driving while drunk. In 1991, there was another episode involving Lemmy and a female fan who became physically violent. People accused him of attack and took him to court. Did he learn more as he got older? Without a doubt not. Lemmy never seemed to be able to slow down. In 2004, he was kicked out of a hotel for making a noise, and the cops were called to take him away. He refused to do what they said. It's not a surprise that he hated a lot of people. Many of his peers were very important to Lemmy. He had strong feelings about some bands, but let's talk about a friendship that would change the history of rock and roll first. The two of them were Ozzy and Lemmy Osbourne. Both of those names make me think of extreme rebellion and famous music. In the early days of Motorhead and Black Sabbath, they became friends. Their friendship would lead to some of the most famous rock songs ever written by two bands working together. Lemmy and Ozzy were great together for rock and roll. How well they got along was clear from how well their first projects together turned out. Oh No More Tears, Mama, I'm Coming Home, Hellraiser, Desire, and I Don't Want to Change the World are just a few of the songs that Lemmy helped write for Ozzy. But Ozzy added his signature scream to the Motorhead song I Ain't No Nice Guy from March or Die. Their friendship with each other had a big effect on the songs they made. Lemmy's wild energy and rebellious personality inspired Ozzy, who wanted to break away from Black Sabbath. Ozzy, on the other hand, brought a new level of showmanship to Motorhead's live shows with his acting and fun. But the music was not the only thing. They were both lying to each other. They broke into a hotel room in Tokyo one time. They also secretly recorded a version of Stand By Me while they were drunk another time. Lemmy sang on it, and Ozzy played guitar on it, but it was never released. He wasn't like that with other bands or famous people either. His close friends and family were against ABBA and Queen, two bands he publicly disliked for their sugary, saccharine pop sound and for being too theatrical and haughty. Another well-known event was his fight with Pink Floyd, which he called Pink Fraud. But according to him, they were too business and showy. Roger Waters of Pink Floyd responded by calling Lemmy an ancient animal, which made things even worse. Lemmy replied. At least I don't wear a tutu on stage. Lemmy liked making up names. He didn't like how U2's music seemed to have moved away from the raw energy and wild spirit of rock and roll. The name U2 was even given to the band by him. He famously said, "The reason I'm in a band is to stop people like them from making music in U2." Because U2 fans and reviewers alike found Lemmy's comments boring, they were quick to weigh in on the controversy they caused, as the public was amazed and interested in them. Among all the groveling from the business elite, these people said he stood out as a refreshingly honest person. Some people said he was a selfish, old-fashioned rock star who couldn't keep up with the times. What did Lemmy do in response to the criticism? In order to protect the image of rock and roll, he was willing to hurt some people. To put it simply, Lemmy doesn't care. Lemmy has the right to his opinion, and he kindly said that U2 has the edge.